Hello, everybody. This is Scribe Slindy, Jonathan Stewart, whatever you want to call me. I'm here with Sugarbombed.com, or actually, I'm here with Courtenay Taylor and Kal-El Bogandove. Oh, no, I messed that up. How is it, Cal?
It's Bogdanove.
Bogdanove. He told me right before I started recording, and I immediately forgot it. Okay, so I was lucky enough to get them in here to talk a little bit about their jobs and, of course, a little bit about Fallout. In case you're tuning in and don't know who Courtenay is, which I don't know how you couldn't, she is the lead female protagonist for Fallout 4. And what I didn't know was Cal was actually the, what did you say it was again, Cal?
I was the lead voice and performance capture director for the game. So I worked primarily in the booth, but also directing the actors through some limited motion capture and facial tracking performances.
So he did all of that. He was like the man behind the scenes, which is actually pretty great. That's a good question, Cal. The motion capture, was that done by the vocal performers, or did you have a separate set of people for that?
Nope, same. The wonderful thing about performance capture, by and large, is that it is now allowing us to get the full performance of these very, very talented voice actors into the game and translate it to these other character models. So it was pretty much one-to-one, I think.
That's pretty awesome. Now, is that the standard procedure for pretty much all games now, or is that only for facial capture-heavy games?
Do you mean in terms of having the same actors do the voice and the physical performance? It's hard for me to say, because the process for Fallout is so specific because the game is so large and because there's so much player freedom in terms of what you can do. Like you can walk away in the middle of any conversation. By and large, performance capture is used much more heavily in many other games that have more cinematic, cinematic storytelling, right? Where you're just on rails watching a cutscene. And it's used to varying degrees by games that are as interactive as this one. Certainly they're using motion capture as the basic layer of information for character models running and swinging and punching and doing all that kind of stuff. That can really be anybody. It can be folks at the Bethesda offices in Rockville, or it can be actors out here. It can kind of be whomever. The thing that I think is crucial to point out, however, is that even with great performance capture technology, that doesn't eliminate the necessity of having very, very skilled animators on the team. Because basically all it's doing is allowing you to get a rough draft much faster. It still requires the eye of a great animator to take the raw data that comes off of an actor's performance and bash it into something that is, beautiful and recognizable to us as being human and doesn't fall into the uncanny valley or jitter or do any kind of other strange thing.
Not that we don't already look beautiful.
Oh, of course.
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, the
they have an amazing canvas to work with. They just work with what's there and enhance our natural beauty.
They touch it up a little bit.
Exactly.
It's just that I feel that in addition to the work of Courtenay and the other actors and those of us who were in the capture space, it's also worth mentioning guys like Rick Weissens on the Bethesda team who do all the animation that has to occur afterwards to make that stuff look great. He's that guy is the reason that NPCs have emotional attitudes based on what's being said and stand around looking very alive rather than just standing there and letting their jaws flap. So,
that's one of the huge draws for Fallout. For sure, is the way everything feels so real. And I mean, any open world RPG is going to have that, but since you're in the first person perspective for Fallout, which doesn't happen with a lot of RPGs, you definitely can tell how much work the animators put into it. It really is gorgeous.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and we are always in awe of them. And I am always in awe of the actors who do such a great job first time around.
And we look exceptionally beautiful on the days we are doing facial capture, I have to say.
Yes, nothing is more flattering.
Yes, when you've got a hat with a camera sprouting out of it and right in your face with a bright, bright light, and then anywhere from like black slashes or green dots on your face that make you look like you have some kind of strange disease. It's yes. They have a lot of work to do. And they do a wonderful job because, we are not at our best on those days.
If somebody ever walked through like a time portal or something from like 300 years ago and saw you in there, they're going to think you're committing like a ritual or something. Like, what are these people doing? Jesus Christ.
Even today, people are like, what? I've been standing out on the street and had cars drive by when I was in a mocap suit. They're like, what are you doing?
Is that like a full suit when they're getting your facial, or is it just the face part?
No, for Fallout, we did just face. So we had a hat and a camera rig on our heads, and the camera kind of comes down sort of in between like your nose and your mouth in front of you about, I don't know, maybe 4 inches away. And then you might have like a shoulder, kind of an elastic shoulder harness thing to kind of keep everything in place. But other projects I have done require full suit. You know, the dots on the shoes. Clothes,
the little ping pong balls.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually there was some of that done for Fallout as well, just not, not with the player character whose bodies are sort of fully under player control at all times, but folks like Courtney Ford, who played Piper, and John Gentry, who played Preston, did some full body capture stuff, for some of their key sequences early on, and there was really a blend of different technologies at work, but the bulk of it was for facial capture for Brian and Courtney and the folks that they're talking to on kind of the key central quest revolving around Sean.
Oh, cool. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
On that note, if you guys are cool with it, I think we'll start with some Fallout questions, and then at the end we'll move on to some general voice acting. You said Sean. I'm going to jump straight to the point. Courtney, the scenes when you were recording for where you find out that Sean is father in the institute. We can talk about spoilers now. It's been long enough. Deal with it, guys. You would not believe how I talked to Brian a month or two after the game came out, and I still had people complaining about that. So what was it like? Did you know that plot twist there? It was interesting talking to Brian in the interview, who was telling me he had no clue that Sean was father, and he's kind of a method voice actor, he was telling me. So he'd been recording for a year with the whole thing like, okay, find my son, I gotta pretend like my wife died and somebody kidnapped my baby, and then he gets to the part, holy shit, what's going on here? Did you have any sort of that, or did you already know?
I mean, Cal gave us a lot of information, but no, I mean, we did sort of quests, quest by quest, and then, it wasn't like I mean, the way that I work in the booth is I expect anything, and so I wasn't like, I was like, oh, okay,
But
wow.
You weren't totally caught off guard, like emotionally or anything.
Well, I kept it from them until that day.
but it wasn't like, I don't remember how, like,
If you don't remember, that's fine. I was just curious.
No, I was caught off guard. It's not like we got the information beforehand. It's not like Cal ever sat us down and said, okay, here's the overarching story, just so you know. We're going to go here, then we're going to go there, and we're going to go wrap it up, and surprise. So, no, I didn't know until the day of, but I also, for me at least, like, I was already in the headspace of anything could happen.
Yeah.
With the game, so the different things that we did on any given day, I was kind of like, okay, yep, sure.
Let's go.
All right, that's screwed up. That's trippy. Okay, we're doing what? So there was quite a few times where I was kind of like, wow, that's not what I was expecting, but all right.
like the Silver Shroud? I imagine that was quite interesting for you.
Yeah, I was kind of hesitant, I was like, well, why this, Brian's character is going to nail this, because I heard Silver Shroud should sound in my head, and then when they played me what he sounded like. I was like, this is going to sound so weird with a woman doing it. And then it ended up being one of my favorite parts of the game.
It ended up being totally 100% amazing.
Was that
Yeah,
scripted,
like,
or were you just kind of going
like,
off the top of your
what's
head?
happening with it? Oh no, everything is scripted, but it was it kind of worked because I expressed my sort of hesitance about it, and Cal was like, let's just have fun with it and see where it goes. And so it kind of worked, actually, that the character is like, you want me to do what? Okay, because I was feeling like that too. And then I started to get into it. Now it's super fun. It's like, anytime anyone's like, what's one of your favorite lines, and I'll rip a silver shroud, that, people just laugh at conventions. They'll say this line, and I'm like, sure.
Sure, why not?
It is you who have fallen. And we just, it ended up being one of my favorites.
You did such a good job. I love it.
Thanks. I think it's way more unexpected coming from a woman, but I loved that they left in the kind of like, sure, okay, and didn't be, weren't like, nope, you just got to go for, it's like all of a sudden you change your mind. Well, so there was a lot of weird stuff. Honestly, like after a year of that stuff, there was not a lot that could kind of throw me. Well, it threw me, but everything kind of threw me.
Well, because you have to play multiple people in Fallout, at least in Fallout, because you have the different sort of responses, asshole, nice, etc. So you kind of have to be a little bit of everybody while recording. So I imagine that does kind of brace you for anything that can happen, since you're playing so many different, basically, people just with the same voice. And
in this game too, there's just so much stuff where you're just like, I'm going to be romancing who? Okay. Like the whole ice creams, like the brain thing, that kind of threw me. Like that was one of those things where after a while I was just like, all right, whatever you guys say.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's really it.
Well, I'll ask you one more, and then I'll move on to Cal. I don't want to leave him out. Which one was it? I had a great question. Where was it? Oh, here's one. Going on to the writing for Fallout, I think it's been agreed by a lot of people, even if they don't like Fallout, because I know some people with Fallout 4 don't agree with the direction Bethesda went. But from everything I've heard, the writing has been pretty much, like as a consensus, really good. One of my favorite characters, and the favorite character of a lot of people I know, was Kellogg. As a villain, he was, really interesting, as you got to see kind of like how he became a villain, what happened to him through the memory flashback sequence.
And can we talk about how amazing Keith Farley was in that role?
Oh my God. I have gone back and just
good.
listened to his lines. Like, I have reloaded saves just to listen to him talk.
Yeah, he's great.
He was absolutely spot on. What was this question? It says dialogue with Kellogg. I probably should have elaborated. What did you know what? I'll direct this towards Cal.
It's probably the hatred part.
Yeah, the hatred part. You know what? That's a good one. Courtney, what was it like having to hate somebody that much? And then along with that, Cal, what was it like having to handle that dialogue, how it worked, the interplay between the two, since that is kind of your job from what I understand?
Well, that was one thing that threw me, because I didn't know. I'm actually friends with Keith Farley, and I did not know that he was voicing Kellogg. And so I had called on, I had made sort of Frankenstein, a person in my head of various, people I have not cared for over my life. And then just the circumstances, obviously. And so it was far more intense of a day than the sessions were more intense than I thought, and I really did. I had something in my head that was really hateful, and then so it did kind of threw me when I was like, wait, it's Keith. Not to mention that I hang out with Keith, and we had never mentioned that we were both obviously we have these ironclad NDAs, and so it's funny because quite a few of my friends worked on the game, and we were all sort of working on this project and not talking about it. And then later on, it was like, what? Who?
You
Oh
were
my
in that,
gosh!
what?
And I remember Cal calling me and saying the trailer's out, the launch trailer's out. And that was the first time I heard him. And even though I worship Keith Farley, he's so hateful and so diabolically, his voice is like butter normally to my ears. I listen to him read the phone book, but it's so perfect for that kind of character. It can really turn, and
He fits it so well because you can hear the charisma just dripping out of his voice, but you hate him so much, and the
more
character
so
hates him
because
so
of the
much.
charisma and I think
Exactly.
if he has this sort of like this chocolatey voice, and then you're just like, oh, So
There you
it
go.
was really
Channel that
fun.
anger, Courtney.
Those were great. It was a fun bit of the game for sure. Dealing with him.
What kind of conversations did you have with him once you realized, holy shit, you're in this too?
We didn't really, it's funny. I had dinner with him last night. We've never really talked about it more than like, oh my God, you're Kellogg. I don't know if he knew, but that I don't think it was shared among other actors who was playing who. So I don't think he knew either. But he just sort of laughed, and he's super cool. We didn't really get into.
Yeah.
At this point, it's like with every game, it's kind of nice to kind of go through and see, because we don't get to work together, and so it is nice to kind of at least afterwards acknowledge that you work together, but you just didn't know it.
Oh yeah. Well,
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like that.
You have anything to contribute to that, Cal? About Kellogg? Anything related to that? Since you're the boss.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm the boss. Yes. No. Todd and Emil are the boss.
You're the voice boss. That is
I
your
execute
domain.
their vision. But thank you. I like to think I have at least a good contribution. Kellogg is this genius thing from a variety of perspectives, right? Keith's performance, obviously tremendous. The real fire and authenticity that Courtney and Brian brought into their reaction to the character, but also just the writing, right? You spend, depending on how you play the game, whether you go whole hog in the central quest or you do a bunch of other stuff, side questing surrounding it, you spend a lot of hours focusing on hating this guy, right? And on seeing him as very, very two-dimensional. He's this sort of ruthless killer and blew away your spouse and all this stuff. And then the genius of the writing, is that no matter what, in order to find him, you're forced to, in order to find the Institute, you're forced to take, his perspective. I mean, not just to see things from his perspective in a metaphorical way, but like to literally live through his life.
Yeah, you watch
in a very immediate way. And I think it's good that you bring it up, because I think one of the things that's kind of emblematic of the Fallout universe, and part of the reason we love these games and as fans, and is that as much as possible, I think they resist the really easy, really pretty cliches about stuff like this. I mean, obviously they will play with tropes sometime like anyone else, but I think that the story and the look of the world are one and the same, right? It's sort of beautiful and horrible at once. You're like, oh, this amazing vista, but really it's the skeleton of a society. Kellogg's Quest to me is like that. It's kind of interesting and touching and beautiful, but also it's tinged with the knowledge of the fact that he becomes this repulsive murderer. So I got to sort of sum this up, I guess. What I'm saying is that we as voice professionals in the video game space don't always get to contend with stuff that is as weighty as that. You know, it's really rare for anybody to ask you in a game. I guess less so now than in the past, but still in the industry, it's really rare for anyone to ask the player character how they feel about having killed somebody. You know, that's a thing that in drama, where life and death are the stakes, you hear characters get asked all the time in other media. Right. And I think it's really interesting that, like, you kill him first, and then you learn about him afterwards. And there's this opportunity to sort of re-examine your, you know, the character has to re-examine her preconceived notions, and the actual player at home piloting the controller or the keyboard or whatever has to do that too. And I don't know, I think that's an example of very deft storytelling on the part of the designers. It's really, really good stuff. It was a privilege to work on.
I absolutely agree. I've been gaming since I was like 6 years old, so just years and years. And I'm saying this as a fan of narrative in video games, not just Fallout, but he may be one of the best written villains I've ever run into, specifically because they turn everything on its head when they make you relive his experiences. Because I don't think I've ever played a game where it's just been, all right, why is this guy doing what he does? And I mean, I've played games that play with that, but never so directly and never so in your face. All right, here, watch him go through his life. And absolutely fantastic sequence. I was blown away by that little bit of story right there.
Yeah, as were we when we did it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, very cool stuff.
Anyways, I said I would be done with Fallout after this, but I do have one more. I was talking to, what was his name? It's Peter Jessup. He was the voice of Dance.
Yeah, really absolutely.
Cool guy. But he was telling me that when he recorded, and this is more directed towards you, Cal, he told me that when he recorded, every single time he went in for a session, his voice performance director would tell him, remember, it's Pridwin, not Pridewin. Was that ever something you had to remind your the people you were working with at?
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, of all the companions, Peter's one of the only ones I never got to work with. You know, it's a huge game, right? There's hundreds of thousands, 170 something, I forget the number. There's a lot of lines of dialogue.
Oh yeah.
So there were 4 or 5 voice directors total on the project, and even though I was kind of taking the lead, I didn't get to work with every companion, which is kind of a bummer. And I think, you know, his work is just great.
He's fantastic. Yeah.
We certainly let the sessions that were revolving around Brotherhood of Steel characters dictate our approach to words like Pridwin. That was definitely, you know, we definitely had discussions about that. You have to, anytime you're living in a world, you know, anytime you're working in a story where there's a lot of imaginary material, right? Where there are a lot of things that are you know, made up for the purpose of the storytelling. You're shooting for a kind of verisimilitude. You want it to feel real, even though it's something that was invented. And one of the most important ways that you are able to do that is by giving everybody a consistent approach to words that you know, are not real, like Mirelurk, but that everybody in this universe says relatively frequently.
Right.
Although I will say, you know, anyone who has heard people call, like, soda different things in different parts of the country will know that it's pop in some places and it's soda in others, and in the South they just call everything Coke, which blows my mind.
Everything is Coke. I can attest to that. I've lived in several southern states. It is Coke. It does not matter as long as it has bubbles.
Yeah, that's what I've...
Unless it's Diet Dr. Pepper. And then
okay, that's fair. Dr. Pepper is like, it has a sanctity that you don't violate. There's Coke, and then there's Diet Dr. Pepper, and sometimes Dr. Pepper, but otherwise it's Coke.
Yeah.
So when Grandma asks you if you want some Coke, you better hope you're getting something good.
Yeah.
Because that grape soda may come out and you're committed. Okay, that's not fair. I like grape soda. Anyways...
Who doesn't?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on.
That's all by way of saying sometimes from character to character, there are plausible regional differences in the way that they would say a given word, right? You go in tomato. So we try to strike a balance between being consistent and not being so uptight. Like the standard is about not breaking the naturalism. You want it to feel organic and real, and like the character who's saying it would say it that way. So cool. That's kind of a long-winded answer to a simple question. But yes, we discuss the Pridwin often.
I just have to tell you that Peter Jessup's ears must be burning because he just texted me. He did. And I texted him back and said, talking about you on an interview right now, we'll call you Pridwin, not Pridewin. And he said, that's right, with a big smiley face.
No, that was one of his big points, was they always reminded me every time I walked in, it's Pridwin, not Pridewin, which I get because he says it a lot. But that was one of his big things, like they wouldn't shut up about how to pronounce it.
I'm sure we.
No, I don't remember. Did we have problems with that, Cal?
You guys? No, not really.
I don't feel like that was it, because the thing for me was that it was with a Y.
I mean, the thing is, you guys had so many sessions.
Yeah.
Right? That, because, Brian and Courtney, they were like extended family for me by the end of this thing, because we had so many sessions together over the years that I think, and tell me if this is off base, Courtney, I think it became kind of second nature for them what the texture of the world was, a little more than someone who might have only come in for a handful of sessions over the course of the game. I think it became very, it's like, oh, here we go, back to the Commonwealth.
Yeah, you have
where I've been before.
It's a luxury to have the kind of schedule that we had, where we had 4 days, in a row of doing this, and then we would come back to it about 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later.
That sounds great.
Whereas someone else might be doing 2 or 3 days. I mean, I can't say for sure what their schedules were, but they might be doing 2 or 3 days and then not come back for 3 months. So, I mean, I work on ongoing games like that where I come in and I'm like, wait, what do we call it again? It's different when it's part of your sort of vernacular that you get to build over, a concentrated period of time.
It just becomes second nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What Cal said. Cal's my blankie. What he said.
Courtney's right that it was kind of a luxury for us to be able to work this way, because particularly on a game this size, you don't often get that opportunity to really slow down and treat things with nuance and be collaborative with the designers in the way that all the writers and designers on the game, we had a really, really positive and I think very fruitful working relationship with, and they were really good about hearing input, and we hopefully were good about taking it and getting to really refine it over the course of a lot of time. Like, we'd record something and they'd go and put it in the game and actually test it out and then come back to us. Which, by contrast, there are games that I've worked on in the past where everything got recorded in the last couple of months. It was just breakneck speed and there was no time to explore any of that stuff. So it was...
So it's going to ruin us for any future work.
What I'm saying is we're spoiled, and you can thank my Stanford audio director Bethesda for that.
Exactly. What do you mean we don't have a couple of years to work on all of this? Darling, this is the way I do everything from now on.
Yes, I simply can't.
Yes.
You'll have to tell Discover Card that you need a proper schedule. At least 3 weeks.
Positively third world, darling. We need far more. I need 10 hours to record this 15-second spot.
There you go. I'm sure that'll go over real well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They'll be like, and you're fired. Next.
Oh yeah, I imagine you have an army of people willing to take your spot. If not,
I think I do.
Well, on to that note. How did you get into the voice acting career, Courtney? I'm going to slap you with one you've probably been asked a million times, but if you don't mind, I'll ask it again.
I was going to theater school in San Francisco and managing a boxing gym to pay for my theater school. That is, yes. It's how everyone gets into voiceover. And I applied for a master's program in New York, and I went and did my contemporary and classic monologues. And when I was finished, the sad, sour little man that was presiding over my audition said, "You have a terrible voice. Your vocal cords are damaged, and you would never play to the back of a theater with that voice. Oof. I can't possibly even accept your application unless you go to a doctor and proceed with some sort of speech therapy."
Oh my
And
God.
so I was really, I was nervous and really pumped up, and that was not the reaction that I was expecting.
Can you imagine? I just want to apply. Every time I hear this story, it makes me furious. Can you imagine the unmitigated gall of this sad, no one little fucker who said this to Courtenay Taylor,
I
one of the
cannot
great
imagine.
voice actresses of all time? It makes me furious.
Well, I mean,
no,
on two
he did me a
ends.
huge favor. He did me a huge favor. I think he was an angel in the body and psyche of a very bitter, angry man. But because honestly, had I not, I work the best when people tell me I can't do something. It reinforces my dedication to actually getting that thing done. And so after my initial upset and going back to my, one of my teachers, who then suggested that I take a voiceover class, I really have to thank that guy, because I don't think I would have ever known until much, much later that voiceover was even an option. So by him trying to step on my spirit with huge boots, he did me the favor of having me be so upset that I went to somebody to tell them why I was absolutely crushed. And she gave me this wonderful, she sort of put me on this path. And then I went to the class and I loved it. I just loved it. I mean, it was a commercial class, but I loved the idea of being able to narrate. To this day, I love doing commercial copy. Some people don't like it, but I love being the narrator to someone's dream or someone's aspirations, or or describing something that I love. I was the voice of Ghirardelli Chocolate for 5 years, and
for real?
and it was just so lovely because chocolate is awesome, but it was a love letter to my hometown. And I felt so, and by no coincidence, at the end of that voiceover class, the voiceover teacher called me in for my very first audition. And that was it was for a hospital that was in San Francisco. And the whole commercial was a love letter to San Francisco.
That's so
about
cool.
how great it was and how we built a city out of sand, and, just how San Francisco came to be. And it really set the tone for my love of all of this work. I'm not a gamer. I never, I didn't game. I wasn't really allowed to watch TV or anything when I was growing up. So this gave me entree into a huge world that I really didn't know existed. And, on many levels. And, commercials gave way to video games, which to me are, I have the honor of getting to participate, getting to be, on some level, be it, an NPC or, in this wonderful instance, the voice of the player, like an amazing movie, the best movies that are out now are comparable to, video games, and those movies are cinematic and story-wise are so rich and amazing. So that guy set this, sort of dropped this pebble that made these incredible ripples in my life, and completely changed the course. I would have moved to Chicago and opened another gym and probably ended up, being, I don't know what would have happened to me, because I'm not a gym person, honestly. I don't know where I would have ended up, but I definitely wanted to send him flowers several times in my career, but I refrained because I can't find him now anyway.
With the URL link to your IMDb page.
Sorry?
I said with a link to your IMDb page. There you
Yes,
go.
I ended up at 1 year, I booked the Toyota national campaign where I did all these Toyota commercials. And I really wanted to find him, but I think, I sort of blocked his name out.
Right.
And I'm sure he's not working anymore. It was a long time ago, but yeah, for me, that kind of adversity was really fruitful. And so I always like to, bring that up when people ask me, because, so much in this culture of, this kind of, it's not as bad, I think, now, but when I started and up until a few years ago before it got kind of, geek chicy, people who were gamers and who like a lot of whatever they call nerd culture, had a really hard time. And I love this idea that like the thing that people say sucks about you or isn't good enough or is the thing that gets you teased and picked on and bullied is really the thing that can open up, an amazing world for yourself if you just wait until you get out of high school or college, So for me, it's like a little, I don't know, just a little seed I carry around that, this guy did me a huge favor, actually.
That's really cool. I like that. That's a good answer. That's a very good answer.
Sorry, it was a long answer, but
I don't
but
care.
I
It was Brian's was my wife took me in and they said come record, and my wife said go to the fucking recording session. So yours was a little longer, but it was also interesting. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I just want people to know that the creativity that you have, or the thing that makes you dress differently, or speak differently, or like different things, is going to be the thing that feeds you for your whole life. So try not to hide that. I know it's hard when you're in school and even as even just anyone really, but try not to hide that light, because it really is the thing that makes you an individual, and just rock on with it when you can.
Cool. All right, Cal, do you have an answer to that question? Not the voice acting part, but how did you get into your career?
Yeah, I do. So in a slightly similar note, I kind of started out as a kid doing theater. I think a lot of people who are in entertainment in one form or another did that. I was very, very lucky in that I grew up, my dad's a comic book artist. He drew Superman for a long time. And
oh, wow. Is that where your name comes from? I have to ask.
Yeah, no, it's Superman's name on Krypton. Although I will say, my parents named me before my dad ever had drawn a single line of professional comics. It was just wishful thinking that turned out pretty well.
Because Courtney said, "Hey, do you want me to get Cal on?" And I go, "The only Kal-El I know is Superman." She goes,
that's
the
one. That's the one. Yeah, no. So my father John Bogdanove drew Superman and Fantastic Four versus the X-Men and a number of other things, and my mother Judy has been many different things over the years, but amongst them an opera singer and an actress and a few other things like that. So even though I grew up in a tiny little out in the middle of nowhere town in Maine, I had around me, I was very lucky to have, as part of the fabric of my upbringing, this idea that you could make a living, you could make a life doing something creative that you loved, which is something that I think I count myself very lucky to have had that information available to me, and I think a lot of talented kids kind of don't get that messaged to them very frequently. So if you're out there listening and you are one of those people, know that it's possible to make a life and a living, even if you kind of come from nowhere in this sort of field. But anyway, I started out doing theater. I always really liked film as well. I went to college for film and television, writing and directing, at Emerson College in Boston, which turned out to be very useful when working on Fallout 4 later, because I know Boston. I know Boston really well. And then I moved out to Los Angeles to do an internship. And when it was over, I was like, "All right, Los Angeles, here I am, ready to work." And they were like, "That's great. We're going to have a writer's strike."
Oh no.
Which is, super important, right? I'm a union guy. I picketed at the time to support the writers, even though I wasn't in the WGA yet. It was a super, super important thing to do at that time, and it may become important again. But personally, as someone who was just trying to figure out how to start to get work in entertainment, it was tough, because there was just not a lot of work going around for anybody, even the great pros. So I kind of limped along, writing things and shooting comedy videos and stuff with pals in obscurity for a little while, and doing other stuff like delivering cupcakes and managing apartment buildings and.
What? I didn't know you delivered cupcakes.
Oh yeah, I delivered cupcakes.
Wow, that's a great job to put on a resume. Like, I deliver cupcakes.
And I had to deliver them in some cases to the offices of people who had the jobs I wanted.
Oh,
Oh yeah, you wouldn't believe who I've waited on.
Yeah, yeah, that is the best feeling. Actually, no, almost everybody I ever ran into doing that was super, super nice. But anyway, eventually, I got an email from. It was being passed around in the circles of entertainment from a company called Blindlight. What Blindlight is they are kind of a talent clearinghouse and casting service, production service that interfaces the game industry with Hollywood, right? So, like if you're a little developer in Seattle and you're making a game and you want Mickey Rourke to be the voice of your Navy SEAL and you don't know anything about production, you'd hire Blindlight, and they would go out and they'd cast Mickey and any other voice actors you wanted, whoever it was, and they would produce the whole kind of voice recording process for the game and then hand that back to the developer. And at that time, they were staffing up with just a handful of writers, because they had noticed that also there were a lot of times when developers would need, they would need folks who had a little more professional cinematic scripting ability. And anyway, this email said that they were looking for somebody to hire writers who had a little experience in television and a little experience in comic books. And I happen, or rather a lot of experience in both, but I happen to have a very little bit of each. I had something that I wrote in college, optioned by ABC Family and never produced, which was my only television claim. And I had also written like a 3-page Halloween short story for DC Comics, which through my dad, right? But I had some great samples, so I kind of bluffed my way in there and showed off my samples, which I thought of as being excellent, and which probably in retrospect were probably adequate. And they hired me to with some other folks to work on some games. The first thing I ever did in the interactive space was write additional dialogue for Infamous, the first Infamous game.
Oh, cool.
But anyway, I did a little bit of that with them, and after a while I became aware of the fact that really the bulk of their business was about producing voice work for games. And so eventually I worked up the courage to talk to the producer there, Tim, who I had been working for, and say, like, hey man, I understand that this is what you guys do most of the time, and I trained to direct actors for on-camera work, and boy, gee howdy, wouldn't I love to maybe do some of that, maybe, huh? And and Tim was very polite about it, and he said, well, we like to have our directors coordinate, be voice session production coordinators for a little while, so they can get the sense of how it differs from other kinds of creative work, and then maybe step them up. So for a little while, I was a session coordinator for Blindlight, working under a very, very talented director named Wes Gleason, who has gone on to move into animation. He's like directing Justice League cartoons now, and Wes is awesome. And even though
he's amazing.
He is. He's like the nicest guy. He's super talented. He thinks real fast. He's a really great dude.
He handles actors so well. He's eloquent and concise and gentle, and he's one of the best for sure.
He is. He's tremendous. And even though he was essentially training me so that I could compete in the same marketplace with him, he very generously taught me a lot about what I didn't know about voice work, and then shortly there and God bless him too, because I was a terrible session coordinator. I like that I'm pretty good at what I do now, but I was awful at that. You're supposed to be like You have to be so meticulous with note taking, and it is as fun and exciting as voice directing is. Session coordinating is like the most tedious job on earth. And I was trying real hard, but
I'm like, nah.
I was just awful at it, but he was very patient. And eventually I moved up to voice directing for them as well. The first thing I worked on was something with Danny Trejo called The Fight.
Oh my God, you got to work with Danny Trejo. That's awesome.
He is an awesome dude. As awesome as you think he is, he's that awesome. I can confirm.
I've heard a lot of stories. I had a friend that met him and said that he really is just a great person.
I think he just opened a taqueria.
That's so great.
Trejo's Taco.
Also, he plays Fallout 4.
Does he really?
He does.
Yeah, he posted on Twitter. He was like, "Gotta go back and play me some Fallout," and I was like, "What?"
That's awesome.
Danny, I'm in that.
So yeah, I started small and then kind of gradually worked my way up, and was very lucky to work on Fallout New Vegas and then later Skyrim, and by the time we got around to doing Fallout 4, I had built up some rapport with the very talented crew at Bethesda, and we dove in, and they have been super generous letting us play with their toys ever since. So.
Are you in charge of? Are you going to be in charge of the DLC voice acting as well, or do they have somebody else for that? I know you got to be hush hush about it, but is that something I can ask?
If there were DLC,
if there were
ever to be created for Fallout, yes, we would of course all be involved in that.
Okay, cool. I just didn't know if you had to move on to something else after the main bulk of.
Yeah, no, I mean we do. Anyone who's like a freelancer, we move around to do all kinds of stuff. I also write and direct other things that are other games and things that are not in video games and that kind of thing. But Fallout has been such a joy that anytime they call, I will come running if I have any legs left on which to run. And even then, I'll probably drag my stumps.
That's some dedication right there. Pay attention to that, folks. If you're not going to work on your leg stumps, you're not doing it right.
That's right. Then you aren't really committed.
You're not truly passionate.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the takeaway from all this.
# leg stump passion.
I'm going to make that a thing. All right.
No, wait. I take it back. It's too late. It's already on Twitter.
Wah, wah. Well, anyways, I know you are both busy people, so I will attempt to wrap this up, but I do have, I think, two more questions.
I answered like 2 questions super long, and you didn't get any of your good stuff done. I apologize.
No, you're fine. I honestly, I thought I had updated the list, because I kind of have like a basic list that I use anytime I'm talking to somebody, and it is not up to date. So we're right about on cue with where I would be winding up anyway. So my 2 are, now this one, this can go towards both of you. What is your favorite project that you've worked on? Courtney, I know you've done a ton of stuff. You've been in a ton of the games that I played as a little kid. So it's been crazy getting to actually talk to somebody who was in games I grew up playing. And then Cal, of course, I don't know the exact numbers, but I do know you've done a lot. What are your guys' favorite projects individually that you have been a part of?
For me, and there are definitely characters that I fell into easier than others, but that doesn't necessarily, just because something's easy doesn't make it my favorite. I really, truly feel like there are characters that are close to my heart. Jack, Juhani.
I accidentally romanced her in the second game. I didn't even realize it. I was like, oh, wait, that happened. Whoops. Yeah,
I hear it. I hear it from the strangest people in the strangest places. I'm like, really? We're at a wedding. Like, can we just, okay. You're going to tell me about it now? Maybe we could just get them married and then we could talk about that afterwards. Okay. But I really, I really do learn something every single time I go into the booth. I'm incredibly grateful to Cal because I feel like he gave me so many new skills to use moving forward. Just in talking about how Brian works and seeing how Brian works and just having the luxury of like trying something and building a rapport with a director. I loved, by the end of Fallout, Cal would say, and I go, no, I got it. I can fix it. Let me do it. Just give me another take. And then he would start laughing and he'd go, that's what I was thinking of. And it's just, you really build this awesome, I can feel what he's thinking sometimes. And so I loved Fallout for that and for, many, many other reasons. But I loved doing American Idol because it was one of the first video games that I did. And I was so excited to be there. And while I loved Juhani, I was also so, that was my first big game. And I was really nervous during my sessions. So there's different aspects of different characters that have been really fun and challenging for me. And even when I wasn't having fun because I was concerned maybe that I wasn't doing a good job or that, my best wasn't good enough, that's a great takeaway to get out of the booth and go to work harder, pay more attention, work harder, work on my dialects, work on my death noises and my battle cries and just go back to the roots of acting. So each one has really, I could literally go through, I think I've done 90 games at this point and go through and be like, this one, what was cool about this is this. This one, what was cool, it was this. So favorites are tough.
That's awesome. It must be neat having been in that many projects, because I certainly can't think of many voice actors or actresses that I know of that have done as many things as you have. Like you're credited 130 different things as actress on IMDb, and I'm sure there's other things that aren't even listed here. That's quite a bit of experience in just 10 years.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches for sure. I feel incredibly lucky to have been part of those games and projects, even when, and obviously a lot of them have been, varying degrees of participation, but even the little things, you go in and you're just like a cop on the beat in a Batman game, and you're like, you get to do an accent, or you just get to explore the physicality of different things. I do Elder Scrolls Online, and I play a female Khajiit. And just the fact that I can play with the physicality of her to get her voice, even though she's not, some big character in the game, it's a great exercise for me to really improve my picking my lines up off the page quickly, because it moves at a very fast clip, and how what physicality drops you into that particular character. So there's nuance and interest for me in every character, no matter what size the role is. And, it makes me more excited to do on-camera things when I have those opportunities, to, get to just play at all these different sort of mediums. So I feel very, very grateful, and I can't imagine doing anything else.
How about you, Cal?
I have not nearly had the breadth of work that Courtenay has had, but I will say that I have loved every project I've been involved with for one reason or another. I will also happily say that Fallout 4 has been the most rewarding creative experience probably of my life. It was really, really great project to be involved in, start to finish.
Yeah, it was special. It really did. You rarely get that kind of rapport with the writers and the developers, the people that put in all the work on the other side of the glass.
Yeah.
Were you in active communication with them, either of you?
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I mean, I know you were, Cal. That's your job. But Courtenay, did you interact with the writers or director or anything at any point?
So, secondarily, obviously it kind of goes through Cal, but I did get the opportunity to go out there and meet a lot of the people that were working on the game. I snuck in a little side trip to Bethesda when I was out in DC about, a year ago, maybe. And so that was really cool to get to, take a little peek at how things were shaping up. And so, yeah, I mean, usually it can be a fairly anonymous experience if you're kind of in and out on a game.
Right.
And sometimes, like Cal said, you do end up sort of doing your bit at the end when everything is sort of already laid out and there's not a lot of room for change. And this opportunity was not that at all. Felt very collaborative. Even when Cal was just, Cal would be like, hold on, let me ask, and then he'd come back with an answer. So it felt very immediate to me. But go on, Cal. I'm sorry, I jumped in.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it was great doing the premiere, right? Because we got to finally see the faces of a bunch of really talented designers who we'd interacted with on the phone, constantly for years at that point. I had the advantage that in the very beginning, when we were first talking about the project almost 4 years ago, I went to. They'd been working on it already for a while, but this is when they were starting to figure out how they were going to do the voice material for this game. They brought me to Rockville to meet Rick Weissens, the animator, and Mark Lampert, the audio director, and of course Emil and Will Shen and Todd. But I didn't meet the entire design team. I just kind of knew those dudes. And there have been so many great writers and designers working on this since then that we had talked on the phone with all the time, but not actually met until we got to go to the premiere and everybody was there. So it was one of those strange things where it's like you almost, even though you've never met someone before, you almost recognize them, just because you've done so much, you've been through so much altogether, at that point.
It's like you know them even though you've never met them, kind of thing.
Right, exactly. So I don't know. I forget what the question was, but I hope that answers it.
Oh no, that's a great answer. That'll work. All right, last one, real short. Courtney, this will be directed towards you. If you could be the lead in any game show, movie, TV series, whatever, what would it be? Like, do you have a dream part for a dream project?
Game show?
No, game or show or game show, whatever you want to do.
That's a really... I loved the... Like Nick Valentine, the, sort of gumshoe kind of... I love period pieces of any kind, really. So, I salivate over Game of Thrones. I love things that are set in the 40s. I love anything that's stylized. So for me, anything sort of around that, like visually to me, is really, really fun. But then I also love kind of action movies. And I mean, I remember seeing like Terminator. And
Lord.
Yeah, the second Terminator, when she's doing the pull-ups and all that. Is that the second one?
Yeah.
Second one, right?
Yeah.
She's doing the pull-ups on her bed. Like, I've always also been really drawn to women like that who have this kind of like, and I guess that's really helpful to come into video games that way, but that have that, what Linda Hamilton had going on in that movie was cool. That kind of stuff, or something like, I'm pretty obsessed with Cersei in Game of Thrones. I think she's pretty fantastic.
You need to hit up Telltale. They're doing that Game of Thrones series.
I think she's doing it.
Oh, that's a shame.
I think she's playing her, and nobody plays her better than her. So
that is true. I haven't watched much of it, but I have seen her. I have seen episodes with her, and she is very good. I
rewind her scenes a lot because she's pretty fantastic, and so I love that. I would love to play any kind of evil queen in animation. I love characters that are struggle with the dark side or don't
or
don't struggle. So those kinds of things. I mean, there's a million things that attract me.
Cool. Well,
I mean, I think it's safe to say that, like, in the space of games, like, you are a like a Linda Hamilton, Sigourney Weaver type of figure. Like there are certainly very few who can do a tough action heroine the way you can. So.
Oh, I agree with that. I mean, well,
Yeah.
Jack is a great example of that because it's kind of hard to stick that label on the female protagonist because her story's kind of supposed to be open-ended. But I mean, I haven't played in a while, but if I recall correctly, Jack in Mass Effect 3, one of your bigger roles, had a pretty troubled past and was pretty troubled when she signed on with the crew. Am I right with that?
Yeah. Yeah, she had a very, very bad start. But I love that. I love that tension in characters, and there was that in Fallout, and it didn't unfold right away. So I had a little kind of okay, how am I gonna meet myself with this character, or who I lead with,
Right.
And it was kind of great. Again, it comes back to that what surprises you, and once we got rolling with Fallout, nothing really surprised me because I had this kind of image in my head, and the way that that she started out for me was she didn't end up in the same place at all. She didn't even end up in the middle in the same place at all. So, yeah, those characters are always. I mean, I'll take as many as I can get, and anyone that's trying to overcome a tough beginning or tough circumstances. I love that, and I love to see people fail and get back up and continue to try.
Like you did when you first started with the old jackass.
Yes.
Everything comes together.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, thank you so much for coming on. I'll go ahead and let you go. Also, I ran out of questions, but at least 2 questions. So a little bit here and there. I started trying to get some questions from people on Twitter. I didn't see anything stand out, but I did have a lot of people say to both of you that they loved your work and they hope you guys keep it up and all the good support. So that's coming from Twitter. Everybody loves you, which is nice to hear.
Well, thank you, everyone. Please do feel free to find us on Twitter. I'm on there. It's just my name with an @ symbol ahead of it. So @ Kal-El Bogandove, and Courtney's on there as well. You should tweet at us. We will tweet back at you occasionally.
Just remember, kids, it's Courtenay Taylor.
Oh, God, that gave me a ton of trouble. And I've had so many people message me, hey, I want to go follow her, but it's not coming up. I'm like, it's 10. And they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, the ENAY ending. It's the COURTENAY.
Crucial.
It's crucial. Otherwise, there's a wide variety of people on Twitter with some version of my name, and not all of them are.
You got to look for the verified symbol. She's verified.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, anyways, thank you guys so much for coming on, and this will be going up soon, so I will send it to you when it is up. I totally forgot what my outro was because this has been so much fun.
Well, all right, then we've done our job.
Exactly.
Got
Awesome.
any closing?
Do you want
got
me
any
to do it
closing
for you?
remarks for everybody, other than follow me on Twitter, because that's always a great way to close something.
I'll do your outro for you.
That's a good idea.
Okay, this is Courtenay Taylor, and I'm here with Kal-El Bogdanove and Jonathan, also known as Scribes.
There you go. Almost got it.
Damn! All right, one more time.
Yeah,
I'm
you
Courtenay
got
Taylor,
this. Round 2.
Kal-El Bogdanove, and Scribe Slindy, also known as Jonathan in certain circles, to his mom and others. And thanks for listening.
Hey, there you go. You nailed it. And you actually said Cal's name right, so that totally made up for my intro.
Did I? I did, right?
Yes, very
Well, I would
helpful.
hope you said his name right. Jesus.
My name right.
I know.
Worried.
And
It's like,
sometimes
how do
you
I
start
say your name,
overthinking a name like Bogdanove, and you're like,
It's Bogdanove. Yeah, like a bog, like a swamp. Dan, like your pal Dan, you might have if you know a guy named Dan. And it sounds like the short OF.
He has it down to a science.
I never hit the bog enough.
Bogdanove.
It's Pridwin.
Bogdanove. It's Pridwin.
It's Pridwin, guys.
Damn it. There was one that I always bump my head on in the pronunciation in Fallout. God, I can't even think of what it was. There was one that I could never. Oh, I know what it was. It's mute fruit. I always want to say mutt fruit because when
I always call it
spelled
mud
out
fruit.
that way.
I gave up on
mute
it.
fruit, and it makes way more sense as mute fruit.
Right.
But for some reason, my poor, sad little brain couldn't ever quite get that.
It took me a while to wrap my head around it. And in fact, okay, this is a tangent, and then I'm going to stop recording. But you know the Tatoes, right? The Tatoes?
Yeah, boy.
It took me forever to realize why they were called Tatoes. Like I just
Not
didn't put
Tatos?
2 and 2 together.
Yeah. So you are bringing up what is my favorite hidden great line with Brian in the game. Actually, I love his. He has this line where, because the player character is new to the world, right? He doesn't know what anything is. So you always have the option to like go around and say, "What's this? What's that? What's this other thing?" Right?
Right.
And when you have the conversation about Tatoes with people, there's this line that was written. It was clearly written to sound like this: "What's a Tato? Short for potato?" Right?
Right.
But when Brian got to it, he delivered it like this. He said, "What's a Tato?" Ah, short for potato. And for some reason, that destroyed me. It was not what I expected at all.
You sounded like Brian there too. I'm impressed. I'm gonna have to send that his way because you had him down pretty spot.
Short for potato. And he was so proud of having figured it out.
He actually told me his other line that he had a ton of problem with was a dictol because he'd always start laughing because you have to emphasize the dick in it. And we were being really immature when we were talking about it, but he goes, I always had trouble recording that because I'm like, please tell me it's not a dictol because I'm gonna lose my shit if it is.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. You gotta hit the dick in a dictol.
Yeah, that was a tough look. I was like addictol.
I thought it was Addict-Doll. I was kind of hoping it wasn't the other way.
I blame everything on having my mom's English, my dad's Australian, so I'm always like, I don't know. I don't speak your language. I have no idea.
There you go. Australian and English are 2 totally different languages, guys. That's
Exactly.
important.
It's true.